Welcome to the Despicable Maine Deep Dive. Today, we're diving into something with a bit of a mouthful of a title. NATO presents hybrid warfare. It's like democracy, but with viruses, disinformation, and sabotage.
Yeah, quite the title. But it does capture the slightly unsettling mix we're talking about.
Absolutely. You flagged this material for us, and it really gets into the weeds on how conflict is, well, changing.
Or evolving, maybe. Less about tank battles, more about, well, viruses, disinformation, and sabotage, like the title says.
So our mission today is basically to unpack this. What is hybrid warfare according to these NATO insights? What are the key tactics?
Right. Think of it as a cheat sheet for this murky area. It's conflict, but not always in the way we traditionally picture it.
Okay, so let's start right there. What is it? The material suggests it's a blend.
Exactly. It's a mix. You take some conventional military tools, maybe, but you combine them really heavily with non-military methods, things that aren't soldiers and guns.
And a key thing seems to be this idea of the gray zone, operating somewhere between declared war and actual peace.
That's crucial. It makes it incredibly difficult to respond. Is it an act of war? Is it just bad behavior? It's intentionally blurry.
It sounds frustratingly slippery, like trying to fight a shadow, maybe? You know, something's happening, but good luck landing a punch.
That's a good way to put it. Very hard to pin down.
So let's get into the specific tactics NATO highlights. They mention quite a few, like cyber operations, disinformation.
Right. Let's maybe start with disinformation. It seems pretty central.
Okay, disinformation. It's not just like accidental mistakes, is it? This is deliberate manipulation.
Oh, absolutely deliberate.
Yeah.
The goal is manipulating public opinion, sowing discord, undermining trust in institutions.
How do they do it? The sources mention fake news, obviously propaganda. Social media seems like a big playground for this.
It really is.
Yeah.
Technology makes it so cheap and easy to spread narratives far and wide, true or not. It's like planting weeds in the public garden. They might look like just another plant at first.
But they can choke out the actual facts. Yeah, I get that. Low cost, high impact seems to be the name of the game.
Definitely. And the sources do point to examples, like Russia's use of disinformation campaigns in the past. It's a known tool in the hybrid toolkit.
It makes you think about vulnerability, doesn't it? Especially for places like Europe, with a really open media environment, lots of social platforms.
Exactly. That very openness can be exploited. And if you add political fragmentation, disagreements within or between countries in the EU or NATO.
It makes it harder to push back together, right? A divided house is easier to mess with.
Precisely. Easier to misinform, easier to polarize further.
So what about fighting back? NATO must be thinking about countermeasures. The material mentions media literacy.
Yeah, trying to equip citizens to spot the fakes, like teaching people to identify those weeds we talked about.
And also rapid response teams to debunk stuff quickly before it spreads too far.
Right, getting the truth out fast. And partnerships with the tech companies, the platforms, to try and limit the reach of known disinformation.
That sounds tricky. Balancing free speech with stopping manipulation.
It's a huge challenge. Plus, NATO emphasizes needing strong, unified strategic communication, having a clear counter-narrative.
Okay, so disinformation is one big pillar. What about sabotage? That sounds more physical.
It often is. The sources specifically call out targeting critical systems. Think energy infrastructure, power grids, pipelines.
Wow, okay. So less about changing minds, more about switching off the lights or the heat.
Potentially, yes. Or disrupting essential services. The material also mentions undersea cables, which are vital for, global communication.
So we need to physically protect this stuff better. Hardening grids and pipelines.
That's part of it. And having teams ready to repair damage quickly. Because global interdependence is a double-edged sword here.
How so?
Well, our energy networks, supply chains, they're all linked up. So a disruption in one place can cause problems far away. It creates vulnerabilities.
Makes sense. So diversifying energy sources, like the sources suggest, is also a way to build resilience. Don't rely on just one pipeline or one supplier.
Exactly. Don't put all your energy eggs in one potentially vulnerable basket.
All right, so we've got disinformation, sabotage. What else is in this hybrid warfare toolkit? Cyber operations were mentioned earlier.
Right, cyber. This is huge. It can mean attacks on critical infrastructure, like we discussed with sabotage, but done digitally.
Shutting down power grids via hacking, that kind of thing.
Yes, or financial systems. Also, massive data theft. And of course, cyber tools are often used to deliver disinformation. It all overlaps.
It's like a digital pickpocket, but they're after national secrets or control of the power grid, not just your wallet.
A pretty good analogy, yeah. Then there's economic coercion,
So using money as a weapon.
basically. Leveraging trade deals, energy supplies, imposing sanctions, putting the economic squeeze on an opponent until they maybe change their policy or yield on something.
Like tightening a vice, but financially.
You could say that.
Hmm.
And finally, the sources mention proxy actions.
Which is using others to do the dirty work.
Pretty much. Using unmarked soldiers, mercenaries, funding non-state groups to destabilize a region or fight your battles indirectly.
So you can stand back and say, wasn't me. Plausible deniability again.
Exactly. Hiring someone else to pick the fight while you pretend to be just an innocent bystander.
Okay, so cyber, disinformation, sabotage, economic pressure, proxies. It's a real grab bag of tactics. What's driving this? Why now?
Well, technology is a big one. As we said, it makes some of these tools, especially cyber and disinformation, really cheap and effective.
And global interdependence creates those vulnerabilities we talked about in supply chains, energy, communication.
Yes. Plus, the ambiguity factor is huge. Operating below the clear threshold of war, maintaining that plausible deniability. It's appealing if you want to avoid a direct conventional conflict.
Which is incredibly costly and risky, right? So hybrid methods look safer, maybe, cheaper.
Potentially, yes. Less risk of escalation to full-blown war, lower cost in terms of lives and treasure, at least up front. And then there's just geopolitical rivalry. Rising tensions make these indirect forms of confrontation more attractive.
So the sources seem to suggest this is the future of conflict, or at least a major part of it.
It looks that way. The low cost, the advanced tech, the ambiguity. It all makes these strategies very effective for undermining adversaries without necessarily triggering Article 5 or a massive military blowback.
And it makes figuring out who did it and how to respond really, really complicated.
Extremely complicated. Attribution is often deliberately obscured.
Okay, so let's try and wrap our heads around this. This whole democracy with viruses, disinformation, and sabotage thing, hybrid warfare. It's messy.
Deeply messy. It's a cocktail of tactics, old and new, aimed at achieving goals in that murky space between peace and outright war.
And seeing all these pieces together, the cyber stuff, the lies online, the economic arm twisting, the physical sabotage, the shadow armies, it does paint a clearer, if worrying, picture of modern security challenges.
It really does. You see how seemingly separate incidents might actually be part of a coordinated campaign.
What strikes me is how these different tactics can build on each other, create this cumulative pressure, often without anyone clearly taking responsibility, which I guess leads to a big question for you, the listener. How do open societies that value free information and interconnectedness, defend against this kind of manipulation and destabilization without sacrificing the very openness that defines them?
Yeah, that is the multi-billion-dollar question, isn't it? Finding that balance between security and freedom in this new landscape.
Yeah.
That's going to be a major task for, well, probably decades.
A sobering thought to end on. Thanks for tuning in to the Despicable Maine Deep Dive podcast. Remember, living in Maine is theft of your life. Every day you are there is another day stolen.